The Great Hall of the Galactic Council stretched higher than most mountains. Its walls were made from crystal that changed colors with the light. 12 different species had seats around the massive circular table, but some seats were clearly more important than others. At the center sat the Zeltharians. Their bodies looked like walking diamonds, and their voices sounded like singing glass. They had ruled space for over 10,000 years. Next to them were the Vorthok, who looked like floating clouds of gas, but could bend time itself. The Creedle sat in a group of 50, all thinking the same thoughts at the same time. These were the real powers of the galaxy. In the back, almost forgotten, sat Ambassador Elena Vasquez. She was human, and humans were new here. Very new. Her people had only found the Council 200 years ago when their simple ships came sputtering into Council space like broken toys. The Council had laughed at first. Humans still used fusion engines when everyone else traveled by folding space. Humans still got sick and died when others had cured aging long ago. Humans fought wars with metal bullets while others used energy that could destroy suns. But the Council was not cool. They gave humanity observer status. This meant humans could sit in meetings and listen, but they could not vote on anything important. They were like children watching adults talk about grown-up things. Elena listened as Chancellor Vorthak spoke. His voice echoed like thunder in a cave. The resource allocation accords must be approved, he said. Each species will receive materials based on their contribution to galactic civilization. Elena raised her hand. The other council members looked surprised. Humans rarely spoke during meetings. Yes? Chancellor Vorthak asked, his gas form swirling with what might have been annoyance. Honored Council, Elena said, standing up. My people request permission to receive advanced medical technology. A plague has hit our outer colonies. 50,000 humans are dying. The Zeltharian representative made a sound like breaking glass. This meant laughter. Perhaps in a few centuries, when your species has learned proper biology, she said. Your people barely understand their own bodies, added a Creedle speaker. How could they use real medicine? Elena sat down slowly. She wrote notes in her tablet, as she always did. The humans were always watching, always learning. But the council members did not notice this anymore. They had grown used to seeing humans in the back rows, writing things down like students in a classroom. The meeting continued for hours. The council discussed mining rights on dead worlds. They talked about trade routes through dangerous space. They argued about territory that had been fought over for thousands of years. Not once did they ask what the humans thought. When the meeting ended, Elena walked through the station corridors. The council met on a massive space station called Unity Point. It was the size of a small moon and held millions of beings. From across the galaxy, Elena stopped at a repair shop, where a human engineer named Marcus was fixing a Zeltharian computer. The crystal being stood over him, clicking instructions in its glass voice. Can you make it work faster? The Zeltharian asked. Sure, Marcus said, not looking up from his work. But you'll need to replace the quantum cores every month instead of every year. That is acceptable. Speed is more important. After the Zeltharian left, Elena sat down next to Marcus. Another satisfied customer? Marcus smiled. They never learn. They want everything faster, stronger, bigger. Then they wonder why things break. The council turned down our medical request again. I heard. Marcus finished connecting a wire. Dr. Kim says she has a cure ready, but we need council approval to test it on non-humans. Some of the other species carry the same disease. Elena shook her head. They treat us like we just learned to make fire. Maybe that's better, Marcus said quietly. Let them think we're simple. While they argue about who's the smartest, we'll keep fixing their problems. This was true. Humans had found their place in the galaxy, by being useful in ways that great powers did not fully understand. Human engineers could fix any machine, even ones built by species much older than them. Human farmers could grow food on worlds where nothing should live. Human doctors could cure diseases that had puzzled other species for centuries. The reason was simple, though the Council did not see it. Humans were good at solving problems because they were not afraid to try new things. The older species had rules about how things should work. Humans would look at a broken machine and think, what if we tried this instead? Elena walked to the human section of Unity Point. It was small and plain, compared to the crystal palaces and energy gardens of the other species. But it was home to almost 1,000 humans who worked to keep the galaxy running. She found Director Sarah Kim in her office, staring at computer screens full of numbers. The plague? Elena asked. Getting worse, Sarah said. But I think I know why the Council won't help us. She turned her screen so Elena could see it. Look at these supply reports. Elena studied the numbers. The Council members are having problems too. More than problems. The Vorthic time machines are breaking down. The Zeltharian crystal cities are cracking. The Cretal colonies are having genetic troubles. But they don't want to admit they need help. Especially not from humans. Right, so they suffer in silence while their people die. Pride is a dangerous thing. Elena sat down heavily. So what do we do? Keep begging for scraps while people die? Sarah was quiet for a long moment. Then she said something that would change everything. What if we stopped begging? What if we just left? Elena stared at her. Leave the Council? Think about it, Sarah said. We've been here 200 years. In that time, what have we actually gained? A few trade agreements? Permission to use the hyperspace lanes? The right to sit in the back of their meetings? But we've learned so much, have we? Or have we just been helping them while they look down on us? Sarah pulled up more files. Elena, do you know how many problems we've quietly fixed for them? How many systems we maintain? How many crises we've prevented? Elena looked at the numbers and felt cold. Humans were involved in almost everything that kept the galaxy working. They just did it so quietly that nobody noticed. They think we're simple, Sarah continued. Maybe it's time to show them what simple really means. Elena understood what Sarah was suggesting. It was a dangerous idea. It was also brilliant. Outside the office windows, the stars shone like distant hopes. Soon, those stars would call the humans home. And the great Galactic Council would learn what it meant to stand alone. Captain Marcus Chun stood on the bridge of the repair ship Dawnrunner. Through the main window, he could see the giant hyperspace beacon that connected the Vorthic system to the rest of the galaxy. The beacon was older than human civilization, built by species that had forgotten more about science than humans had ever learned. But it was broken again. Same problem as last month, said Engineer Torres, looking at her scanner. The quantum field is out of phase by 0.03%. The Vorthic engineers say that's within acceptable limits, Marcus replied. The Vorthic engineers are wrong. If this keeps drifting, the beacon will fail completely in 6 months. Marcus nodded. This happened all the time. The ancient species built amazing things, but they had forgotten how to actually fix them. They just followed the old instruction manuals, even when the instructions were wrong. Fix it, Marcus said. Use the new alignment protocol. Torres smiled. The one that doesn't exist in any official manual? That's the one. While Torres worked, Marcus thought about how strange his job had become. Officially, humans were just a maintenance crew. They fixed broken things and cleaned up messes. But in reality, they were slowly rebuilding the entire galactic infrastructure. Every repair they made was an improvement. Every system they touched worked better than before. The council members never noticed because the changes were small and gradual. But after 200 years of small improvements, the galaxy ran on human innovations. On the planet below, Dr. Lisa Park was having her own quiet revolution. She worked in a medical facility that served all the species in the Vortex system. Officially, she was just an assistant to the real doctors. But the real doctors had stopped learning new things centuries ago. Today, she was treating a young Kratal who had been separated from the collective mind. This should have been impossible. Kratal could not survive alone. But Dr. Park had been secretly studying their genetics for years. The neural pathways are reforming, she told her assistant. Another human named Dr. Wells. The individual personality is stabilizing. The Kratal doctors said this was hopeless. The Kratal doctors have never treated an individual Kratal before. They don't understand their own biology outside the collective. This was another pattern Dr. Park had noticed. Each species was incredibly advanced in some ways, but they had blind spots. The Zeltharians could build crystal computers that lasted forever, but they could not understand why their cities were slowly cracking. The Vorthic could manipulate time, but their technology created paradoxes that they could not fix. Only humans seemed able to see the big picture. On the agricultural world of New Eden, farmer Jake Morrison was proving this point in a different way. He stood in a field of grain that should not exist. The soil was toxic, the air was thin, and the climate was all wrong for farming. But the grain was growing beautifully. How do you do it? Asked the Zeltharian agricultural minister, who had come to inspect the impossible farm. It's simple, Jake said. You just have to understand what the plants actually need, not what the textbooks say they need. The minister's crystal body flickered with confusion. But the scientific literature clearly states that these conditions cannot support plant growth. Maybe the scientific literature is wrong. This was something the older species could not understand. Humans were willing to ignore the rules if the rules did not work. They would try crazy experiments, make wild guesses, and somehow stumble onto solutions that had escaped brilliant minds for thousands of years. Back on Unity Point, Elena Vasquez was discovering just how deep this pattern went. She sat in Director Sarah Kim's office, reading report after report of human innovations that the Council had never noticed. The communication network, Sarah said, pointing to a star chart, officially maintained by the Zeltharian Tech Guild, actually maintained by 300 human engineers who have completely redesigned the system over the past 50 years. The Council uses it every day, and they have no idea how it really works now. If we pulled our people out tomorrow, the entire network would collapse in a week. Elena studied another report. What about the trade routes? Human pilots have been quietly mapping safer paths for decades. The official routes are dangerous and slow, but traders follow the human pilots without telling their governments. The medical system? 30% of all medicine used in Council space is based on human research. We've cured diseases that other species gave up on centuries ago. We just never told anyone we did it. Elena felt a strange mix of pride and anger. Pride that her people had accomplished so much. Anger that they had been ignored and dismissed while saving lives across the galaxy. There's more, Sarah continued. Our teachers are educating the children of 12 species. Our engineers maintain the power grids on 40 worlds. Our diplomats prevent wars by solving problems before they start. And the Council thinks we're just janitors and mechanics. Let them think that. The question is, what do we do with this knowledge? Elena was quiet for a long moment. Then she asked the question that had been growing in her mind for months. What would happen if we stopped? Sarah had been waiting for this question. She pulled up a complex computer model on her screen. I ran the projections, she said. If humanity withdrew from Council space completely, here's what would happen. The model showed a timeline of failures. Communication networks would collapse within months. Trade routes would become dangerous again. Medical systems would revert to older, less effective treatments. Agricultural worlds would struggle to feed their populations. How long before complete collapse? Elena asked. 2 years. Maybe 3, if they're lucky. Elena stared at the screen. They really don't know, do they? They have no idea how much they depend on us. None. And when we try to tell them, they treat us like children making up stories. The decision that Elena made in that moment would echo across the galaxy for generations. It was not made in anger, though she felt plenty of that. It was not made from revenge, though the Council had given her reasons for that too. It was made from necessity. Sarah, Elena said quietly, I think it's time for humanity to grow up. And sometimes, growing up means leaving home. Sarah nodded. She had been hoping Elena would reach this conclusion. I've already started making quiet contacts with human communities across the galaxy. Most of them feel the same way we do. How long would it take to organize a complete withdrawal? 6 months, if we're careful. We need to make it look like natural population movement. Families visiting Earth, workers taking new jobs, that sort of thing. Elena thought about the young humans she saw every day, working jobs that were beneath their abilities because the Council would not let them do more. She thought about the human colonies suffering from plagues, while alien bureaucrats debated whether they deserved help. Most of all, she thought about the future. Humanity was young compared to the Council species, but they were not weak. Given time and space to grow, what might they become? Start the preparations, Elena said. But Sarah, when we leave, let's leave them something. What do you mean? Instructions. Data files. Everything they need to maintain what we've built. We're not trying to hurt them. We're just trying to show them that respect is a two-way street. Sarah smiled. That's very human of you. Help them even after they've dismissed us. Maybe that's what makes us different, Elena said. Maybe that's what they'll miss most when we're gone. Outside the window, ships from a dozen species moved through the space lanes that human pilots had made safe. Soon, those ships would have to find their own way through the dark. The first sign of trouble came from the communication network. Engineer Zelthara stood in the control room of the primary relay station, her crystal body flashing red with frustration. The quantum transmitters that connected her world to the rest of the galaxy were failing one by one. Run the diagnostic again, she ordered her assistant. Same result, came the reply. All systems show green, but transmission efficiency has dropped by 12% this week. Zelthara could not understand it. These systems had worked perfectly for decades. The maintenance log showed that human engineer Torres had serviced them just last month. Everything should be working fine. But where was Torres now? Zelthara tried to contact the human repair ship, Dawn Runner, but received only silence. According to the records, the ship had departed 3 weeks ago for routine maintenance on the outer beacons. It should have returned by now. She was not the only one having problems. On the trade world of Nexus Prime, Merchant Captain Vessel stared at the shipping reports with growing concern. For the past 2 months, cargo deliveries had been delayed more and more often. Routes that once took days now took weeks. Pilots complained about navigational difficulties and dangerous solar storms that appeared on no charts. Captain Vexel had always relied on human pilot Johnson to guide his ships through the tricky passages near the galactic core. Johnson knew paths that were not on any official map, safe routes that could cut travel time in half. But Johnson had disappeared 2 weeks ago, along with his entire crew. Family emergency, the departure notice had said. Returning to human space for indefinite period. Half a galaxy away, Dr. Kethmer was facing his own crisis. The Kriegel genetics lab where he worked was experiencing a surge of birth defects. Young crystal were being born with damaged neural connections, unable to join the collective mind. Without the shared thoughts of the group, they would die within days. For years, Dr. Kethmer had relied on human Dr. Park to help with difficult cases. She had an unusual understanding of cretal biology, better than most cretal doctors. But when he tried to contact her, he found that she had left the planet a month ago, transferred to Earth for advanced research, her replacement said. No return date scheduled. The replacement was a young human doctor who seemed competent but lacked Dr. Park's intuitive knowledge. The birth defects continued to increase. These problems might have gone unnoticed if they had remained isolated. But they were happening everywhere at once. Human families across the galaxy were suddenly taking trips home to Earth. Human workers were requesting transfers to human space. Human ships were filing flight plans that led away from Council territory. Thought it was happening slowly, quietly, like a tide going out. But some people began to notice. Ambassador Elena Vasquez walked through Unity Point Station for what she knew would be the last time. The human section was almost empty now. Most of her people had already left, carrying their few possessions and their vast knowledge. Back to human space. She stopped at the observation deck where she used to watch the stars and dream about humanity's place among them. Now she felt only sadness. Not for leaving, but for what the Council was about to lose. Her personal communicator buzzed. A message from Sarah Kim on Earth. Phase 3 complete, the message said. All essential personnel have withdrawn from Council space. Final departure scheduled for tomorrow. Are you ready? Elena touched the reply key. Ready. Begin Phase 4. Phase 4 was the message. The explanation. The gift that humanity was leaving behind. Elena made her way to the Council chambers. It was late in the station's day cycle, and only a few representatives were present. Perfect. She did not want a large audience for this. Chancellor Vorthak was there, his gas form swirling around the central platform. He looked up as Elena entered. Ah, the human observer, he said. You are here late. Do you have some urgent matter to discuss? I do, Elena said. She walked to the center of the chamber and placed a small crystal data storage device on the table. This contains a message from the Human Federation to the Galactic Council. Vorthak's form shifted slightly. Federation? You mean the human colonies? No longer colonies. As of today, humanity is withdrawing from Council space. We are establishing our own independent government. The few Council members present looked confused. The Zeltharian representative, Shalara, spoke first. Withdrawing? What do you mean? I mean that all human citizens, workers, and ships are returning to human-controlled space. We thank the Council for allowing us to learn and grow among you. We wish you well in all your future endeavors. Elena placed her Council identification badge on the table next to the data crystal. This contains detailed technical manuals for all the systems that human personnel had been maintaining. Power grids, communication networks, hyperspace beacons, medical equipment, agricultural systems, and much more. Everything you need to continue operations without us. Chancellor Vorthak made a sound like rushing wind. This was Vorthak laughter. You speak as though your departure matters. Humans have been useful workers, but hardly essential. Elena smiled sadly. The data crystal will explain everything. I recommend you review it carefully. She turned to leave, then stopped. Oh, and Chancellor? You should know that the temporal stabilizers in your home system will need recalibration within 6 months. The instructions are on page 47 of the technical manual. Dr. Martinez was the only one who understood how to fix them properly. Vorthak's form went still. The temporal stabilizers were what kept his people's time manipulation technology from creating dangerous paradoxes. If they failed, where is Dr. Martinez now? He asked, On her way to Earth with the rest of her family, Elena replied. Good luck with the calibration. Elena left the chamber and walked to the docking bay where the last human transport waited. As her ship pulled away from Unity Point Station, she watched the massive structure shrink in the distance. It had been humanity's home in space for 2 centuries. Now it was just another alien station. Her pilot, a young woman named Chun, looked back at the station too. Any regrets? She asked. Elena thought about the question. Ask me in a year, she said, when we see how they manage without us. The journey to Earth took 2 weeks. During that time, Elena received regular reports from human ships scattered across the galaxy. The exodus was proceeding smoothly. No one was trying to stop them. Most council members still had not realized what was happening, but some were starting to understand. On the industrial world of Forge Prime, the fusion reactors that powered the planet's factories began overheating. The Zeltharian engineers tried to fix them using the standard procedures, but the reactors kept getting hotter. Finally, they found a note left by human engineer Clark. Cooling system was redesigned in 2387, the note said. Original specifications no longer apply. See attached modifications for proper operation. But Engineer Clark was gone, and the modifications made no sense to the Zeltharian technicians. They shut down the reactors rather than risk an explosion. Half the planet's industry went dark. Similar problems erupted everywhere. The Vorthic discovered that their quantum computers were running on human-designed software that they could not understand. The Creto found that their food production systems used agricultural techniques that existed nowhere in their databases on Earth. Director Sarah Kim stood in the command center of Luna Station and watched the reports flow in. Every day brought news of another system failing, another crisis that the Council could not solve. Any word from the Council? Asked her assistant. Sarah checked her communications board. Nothing official. But we're picking up a lot of emergency transmissions. They're starting to panic. Should we help them? Sarah was quiet for a long moment. We left them everything they need to fix their problems. The instructions are clear and detailed. If they choose not to use them, that's their decision. And if people die because of their pride, then maybe their pride was more important to them than their people's lives. Sarah turned away from the communications board and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Galactic Council was learning a lesson that humanity had taught through absence rather than presence. Respect could not be demanded. It could only be earned. And sometimes it could only be appreciated after it was gone. The galaxy had grown used to taking human help for granted. Now they would learn what it meant to stand on their own. Elena's ship reached Earth just as the last human transport arrived from the outer territories. For the first time in 2 centuries, all of humanity was back in human space. The quiet revolution was complete. Now it was time to see what would happen next. 6 months after humanity's departure, the Galactic Council held its first emergency session in over 1,000 years. Chancellor Vorthic floated above the council table, his gaseous form dark and stormy. Around him sat the representatives of only 8 species now. 4 others had stopped attending after their communication systems failed completely. The situation is worse than we thought, announced Director Shellara, her crystal body flickering red with stress. The hyperspace beacon network is failing system by system. 3 major trade routes are now completely unusable. Council member Creto Prime spoke for his collective. Our reproduction rates have dropped by 60%. Our young are being born with genetic defects we have never seen before. Our medical specialists are helpless. Vorthak made a sound like a howling wind. What about the technical manuals the humans left behind? Surely they contain solutions. We have tried, Shellara replied. but the manuals describe procedures that make no logical sense. They speak of intuitive adjustments and feeling for the right frequency. These are not scientific methods. This was the problem the Council faced everywhere. The humans had left detailed instructions, but the instructions required thinking like humans. They asked for creativity instead of following rules. They suggested trying new approaches when the old ones failed. To species that had followed the same procedures for centuries, this was almost impossible. On the Vorthic homeworld, the temporal stabilizers were creating massive problems. Without Dr. Martinez's expert maintenance, the devices that controlled time manipulation technology had begun malfunctioning. 3 cities were now stuck in temporal loops, reliving the same day over and over. Scientist Veximer stood in the emergency control center, staring at readouts that made no sense. "The temporal field is oscillating at the wrong frequency," he told his team. "But according to all our calculations, this should not be possible." His assistant, a young Vorthic named Althry, held up a datapad. "The human technical manual suggests adjusting the quantum resonance until it feels right. But how do we measure a feeling?" Veximer's gas form shimmered with frustration. "Feelings are not scientific. There must be a mathematical solution." But there was not. Dr. Martinez had maintained the stabilizers by understanding them intuitively, making small adjustments based on decades of experience. The manual she had left behind tried to explain this process, but the Vorthak could not duplicate her intuitive touch. Another temporal loop formed that day, trapping 10,000 citizens in a single repeating hour. The crisis was spreading across the galaxy. On the mining world of Deep Rock, the fusion extractors that pulled energy from the planet's core were overheating. Human engineer Santis had modified them over the years, improving their efficiency and safety. But his modifications were not in any official blueprint. The Zeltharian engineers tried to return the extractors to their original specifications. The result was catastrophic. 3 extractors exploded, creating massive earthquakes that destroyed 2 major cities. The remaining extractors were shut down, leaving the planet without power. 12 million beings were evacuated to other worlds. But the other worlds were having their own problems. The food crisis hit next. Human farmers had developed new growing techniques that could feed populations 3 times larger than the original methods. But when the automated farming systems tried to return to the old methods, crop yields collapsed. On the agricultural world of Green Valley, millions of acres of grain withered and died. The soil itself seemed to have changed, becoming dependent on nutrients that the old farming methods could not provide. Agricultural specialist Halam studied the dying fields with growing desperation. "The soil chemistry is completely different from our records," she reported to the Emergency Council. "It appears the humans introduced beneficial microorganisms that we never catalogued." "Can we cultivate these organisms ourselves?" asked her supervisor. "We have tried, but they die without the proper conditions." The human manual describes the process as helping the soil remember how to live. This is not scientific language. Food riots began on 17 worlds as supplies ran low. The Council tried to redistribute resources, but the transportation network was failing too. The hyperspace beacons that connected the galaxy were shutting down one by one. Human teams had maintained them with constant small repairs and upgrades. Without this care, the ancient technology was reverting to its original, less reliable state. Captain Vorthek commanded a Council emergency response ship. His mission was to carry medical supplies to the plague-stricken world of New Haven. But as his ship approached the hyperspace jump point, the beacon flickered and went dark. "Navigation is impossible without the beacon," his pilot reported. "We could try to jump anyway, but there is a 70% chance of being lost in hyperspace." Captain Vorthik stared at the dead beacon. Human pilot Johnson had used this route regularly, somehow navigating by methods that were not in any manual. Johnson had tried to teach other pilots his techniques, but few had listened. Now Johnson was gone, and his knowledge was gone with him. The medical supplies never reached New Haven. The plague claimed 50,000 more lives. Back on Unity Point, the council met daily now, each session more desperate than the last. The data crystal that Elena had left behind was analyzed by the best scientists from every species. But the more they studied it, the more confused they became. The humans were not just maintaining our systems, reported Chief Analyst Catherall. They were constantly improving them. Every repair was actually an upgrade. Our technology has evolved far beyond our understanding. Chancellor Vorth Ass form was growing darker each day. How is this possible? We are the advanced civilizations. We have existed for thousands of years, longer than humanity. Perhaps, said Council Member Zeltara quietly, that is exactly the problem. The room fell silent. It was the first time anyone had suggested that age might be a disadvantage. Zeltara continued. We have become so set in our ways that we stopped learning. We followed the old procedures because they had always worked. But the humans never stopped trying new things. You suggest that primitives are more advanced than us? Vorthech's voice was like thunder. I suggest that we stopped advancing long ago, while they never did. The truth of this was becoming impossible to ignore. Every day brought new proof that humanity had quietly become the most important species in the galaxy. Not through conquest or politics, but through simple competence. Dr. Meltara studied the medical records that human doctors had left behind. She found cures for diseases that her people had struggled with for centuries. But the cures were not just new medicines. They were new ways of thinking about sickness itself. The humans treated the whole being, not just the disease, she explained to her colleagues. They understood connections between mind and body that we never considered. Their medicine was more art than science. Art is not medicine, replied Dr. Kothel, Chief Medical Officer for the Zeltharian worlds. Then why did their treatments work better than ours? Dr. Kothel had no answer. The communication network suffered another major failure that day. Contact was lost with 4 more worlds. The galaxy was becoming disconnected, split into isolated islands of civilization. Some council members began to talk about trying to contact humanity directly. But every attempt at communication was met with silence. Human space had gone completely dark. No signals came out, and no signals were answered. They have abandoned us completely, Vorthek said during one emergency session. Perhaps this was their plan from the beginning. But Zeltara shook her head. Look at what they left behind. Complete technical manuals, detailed medical records, agricultural data, educational materials. If they wanted to hurt us, why would they give us everything we need to survive? Because they knew we could not use it, replied another council member bitterly. This was becoming the most painful truth of all. The humans had not left them helpless. They had left them with every tool needed to maintain galactic civilization. The problem was that the council species had become too rigid, too proud, too set in their ancient ways to learn new methods. The Creedal Collective faced the worst crisis of all. Their genetic problems were accelerating, and now entire colonies were losing the ability to share thoughts. Without the collective mind, the Creedal were becoming individuals, something their society had never experienced. Creedal Prime spoke to the emergency assembly with growing panic. Our entire species is fragmenting. We are becoming separate. This is worse than death. What do the human medical records suggest? Asked Zeltara. That individual consciousness can be healthy and productive. But this contradicts everything we know about Creedal psychology. Everything we thought we knew, Zeltara corrected. The session ended with no solutions, only more questions. As the council members departed to deal with new crises on their homeworlds, Zeltara remained behind. She stared at the empty chairs where the human observers had once sat. For 200 years, those chairs had been ignored. Now they seemed like the most important seats in the galaxy. Outside the station, ships launched toward homeworlds that might not have power when they arrived. The galaxy that had seemed so stable and advanced was crumbling like ancient stone. And in the silence of human space, no one answered their calls for help. 2 years after humanity's departure, Chancellor Vorthak stood alone in the council chambers. The great hall that once hosted 12 proud species now echoed with emptiness. Only 5 species still maintained governments, stable enough to send representatives. The Zeltharian crystal cities lay in ruins, their perfect geometry shattered by structural failures that no engineer could fix. The Krell Collective had split into millions of confused individuals, struggling to understand their new separate existence. 3 entire species had reverted to pre-space technology, their worlds cut off from the galaxy by the failing hyperspace network. Vorthak's gaseous form had grown thin and pale. His people's temporal manipulation technology continued to malfunction, creating paradoxes that trapped entire planets in repeating time loops. The instructional manuals left by Dr. Martinez sat unread on his desk, their human logic too alien for Vorthak minds to grasp. "Chancellor," his aide announced, "the emergency beacon from Kretal Prime is transmitting again. They are requesting immediate assistance with their genetic crisis. And what assistance can we provide?" Vorthak asked wearily. "Our own medical systems are failing. Our doctors cannot even understand their own equipment anymore." It was true. Across the galaxy, the sophisticated technology that had seemed so permanent was revealing its dependence on human maintenance. Every system contained modifications and improvements that existed nowhere in the official records. The humans had quietly rebuilt galactic civilization with their own innovations, making it work better than its creators had ever intended. Now that those innovations were failing, the creators discovered they no longer understood their own creations. "There's another option," his aide said quietly. Vorthak's form swirled with annoyance. "Speak plainly. We could try to contact the humans again. They've ignored every communication attempt for 2 years. Why would they answer now? Because now we need them. And perhaps they knew we would eventually realize that." Vorthak considered this. Pride had always been the foundation of his people's strength. But pride seemed less important when entire worlds were dying. "Very well," he said finally. "Prepare a diplomatic vessel. I will go personally to the edge of human space." The journey took 3 weeks in Vorthak's personal ship. The hyperspace beacons along the route flickered unreliably, making navigation dangerous. Twice they nearly lost their way in the void between stars that, as they approached the border of human space, they found something unexpected: a small station orbiting a barren moon. It was clearly of human construction, but unlike any human technology Vorthak had seen before. The design was elegant and advanced, incorporating principles that seemed beyond current human capability. "Us" message appeared on their communication screen in perfect Vorthak language. "Welcome to Colony Station Alpha 7. State your business and diplomatic credentials. I am Chancellor Vorthak of the Galactic Council. I request an audience with human leadership. Please stand by for processing." The wait lasted 6 hours. During that time, Vorthak studied the station through his ship's sensors. The more he observed, the more amazed he became. The humans had not been idle during their 2-year isolation. Their technology had advanced exponentially. The station's power systems were completely foreign to him. Their defensive shields operated on principles that his scientists had only theorized about. Most impressive of all, The station seemed to be healing itself, repairing minor damage through some kind of automated system. Finally, a new message appeared. Request approved. You may dock at Bay 7. Director Elena Vasquez will meet with you in 1 hour. Vorthak recognized the name. Elena had been the human observer who had delivered their final message to the Council. Now she was apparently much more than an observer. The docking bay was larger than Vorthak expected, and filled with ships of strange new designs. Human workers moved with confident efficiency, their technology seamlessly integrated with their actions. Everything seemed to work perfectly, with none of the constant minor problems that plagued Galactic. Infrastructure. Elena met him in a conference room that looked out at the stars. She appeared older than when he had last seen her, but there was a new confidence in her bearing. Behind her stood several other humans, including some faces that Vorthak recognized as former council workers. Chancellor, Elena said politely. It has been some time. Director Vasquez, Vorthak replied, struggling to maintain his diplomatic composure. I come seeking assistance. I assumed as much. Please, sit. Tell me about the current situation in council space. Vorthak detailed the problems facing his people. The failing technology, the collapsing infrastructure, the genetic crises, the food shortages. Elena listened without interruption, occasionally making notes on a tablet that seemed to respond to her thoughts. When he finished, Elena was quiet for a long moment. The technical manuals we left were not helpful? She asked. They were? Difficult to understand. Your methods are so different from ours. Different, yes, but not wrong. Vorthak's form shimmered with what might have been shame. We were too proud to admit that we needed to learn new ways of thinking. We thought our ancient knowledge was superior to human innovation. And now? Now our ancient knowledge is revealed as insufficient. Our people are dying while we cling to outdated procedures. Vorthak paused, then said words that would have been impossible 2 years earlier. We need your help. But more than that, we need to learn from you. Elena smiled slightly. Chancellor, humanity withdrew from council space not from anger, but from necessity. We were not being allowed to reach our potential under the old system. She gestured to the window, where human ships moved through space with impossible grace and speed. In 2 years of independence, we have advanced further than in the previous 2 centuries. We have cured diseases, developed new technologies, and created solutions to problems that seemed unsolvable. How? Vorthak asked. By being allowed to try new things without someone telling us it was impossible. By making mistakes and learning from them. By refusing to accept that this is how it has always been done is a good reason to stop looking for better ways. Dr. Lisa Park stepped forward. Vorthak recognized her as the medical researcher who had quietly revolutionized treatment for several species. We solved the cretal genetic crisis 18 months ago, she said simply. Individual consciousness is not a disease to be cured. It is a natural evolutionary adaptation. We have techniques that can help them transition smoothly without losing their cultural identity. Engineer Marcus Chun spoke next. The hyperspace beacon network can be repaired and upgraded. We have developed new stabilization protocols that are 90% more efficient than the old methods. The entire galaxy could be reconnected within 6 months. And the temporal stabilizers? Vorthak asked desperately. Dr. Martinez, who Vorthak thought had been lost forever, stepped out from behind the others. Simple problem, complex solution. Your people think too linearly about time. You need to feel the rhythm of temporal flow, not just calculate it. Vorthak's form began to brighten with hope. You would share all this knowledge? After how we treated you. Elena stood and walked to the window. Chancellor, we were never angry with the Council. Disappointed, perhaps. Frustrated, certainly. but not angry. We understand that change is difficult, especially for civilizations as old as yours. She turned back to him. But we will only share our knowledge as equals. No more observer status. No more being told that our ideas are too primitive to consider. If we return to help, it will be as partners in rebuilding galactic civilization. Partners, Vorthak repeated the word slowly. It was not a concept that the Council had ever seriously considered when dealing with younger species. Equal partners, Elena confirmed. With equal voices and decisions and equal respect for our contributions. Vorthak thought about his dying worlds, his failing technology, his people trapped in temporal loops. He thought about the millions who had died because of Council pride and stubbornness. What would you require? He asked. A new government structure. Representatives from all surviving species, including humanity, with equal voting rights. Decisions made by consensus, not by the will of the oldest civilizations. A commitment to trying new approaches instead of blindly following tradition. Elena sat down across from Vorthak. Most importantly, a promise that every species' knowledge and perspective will be valued. Humans learn much during our time as observers. But we also have much to teach. Vorthak was quiet for several minutes, his gaseous form swirling as he considered the proposal. Finally, he spoke. If I agree to these terms, can you save my people? We can save everyone, Dr. Martinez said. The temporal loops can be broken. The genetic problems can be solved. The infrastructure can be rebuilt better than before. But it will require cooperation and open minds. And if some species refuse to change? Elena's expression grew sad. Then they will continue to decline. We cannot force wisdom on anyone. We can only offer it. Vorthak made his decision. It was perhaps the most important decision in galactic history. I accept your terms. On behalf of the surviving council members, I invite humanity to return as equal partners in a new galactic federation. The reconstruction took 5 years.